Hello and welcome to episode 13 of the Catherine Crochets podcast. Hi, my name's Catherine. Welcome to my crochet podcast. I'm a crochet designer from South London, and this is a podcast where I talk about all the recent crochet projects that I've been working on. It's the 21st of January today, so Happy New Year. This is my first crochet podcast of the year. It's rather late to be saying Happy New Year, but I hope your 2022 has got off to a good start. Ours started well in that the girls both went back to school, which was great. It weren't too sure about whether or not that would happen at the end of last year, but they're both back at school and things seem to be improving. So I think we're all feeling optimistic for the year ahead, although there are currently a couple of cases of COVID in my daughter's class at school, so we might have a little hiccup coming our way soon, but apart from that we are hopeful that things do seem to be improving. The weather's been really cold this week, but been getting out for some nice walks in the mornings after dropping the girls at school, so that's been a really nice start to the days. And the evenings have involved snuggling up under a blanket, crochet blanket on the sofa, and getting on with some crochet projects. So that's been a really nice start to the year. I've also had one pattern release already, which I'll tell you about soon, which I'm really excited about. And there was another one since the last podcast, which I released sometime, might have been just before New Year. It was after Christmas recently, anyway, since the last podcast, and I'll tell you about that one shortly as well. I've got quite a lot of things to talk about today. Mainly crochet as you'd expect, but I've also snuck in one cheeky little knitting project. I haven't knit, what's the right word? I'm not sure. I haven't made anything with knitting for years, and I only ever made a couple of things in the past. So I was very rusty to say the least, and I never really knew much in the first place. So I'm quite proud to have finished a small knitting project, and there might be some more knitting this year. Who knows? We shall see. So I've got a couple of new pattern releases to talk to you about. I thought I had 2 finished objects, and then I remembered I had a third. So I've got 3 finished objects to show you that aren't related to the pattern releases. I've got a whip, which I'll show you an update of, one that you've seen before, but I'll show you a bit more of it, and a couple of new projects. One I've just started swatching, I think you'd call it a swatch for. Anyway, I'll show you that in a bit, and one I haven't yet started, but I'll mention 2 as well. And also I thought it might be nice to tell you, if I have time, about what I've been listening to recently when I crochet. I subscribed to Audible a few months ago, and I used to watch TV while I was crocheting in the evenings, but I found that actually I get a lot more crocheting done if I listen to something rather than watching the TV, because with the TV my crochet keeps being paused while I look at what's on the screen, but listening to things I get a lot more crochet done. So I've been listening to a few things on Audible, so I thought I'd share that with you as well, in case you're interested, and that'll be right at the end of the podcast. So if you're not interested in that because it's not really crochet, then obviously feel free to stop watching at that point. So the first new pattern release since my last podcast was for a blanket pattern, which was first published, I think it was last August, in Crochet Now magazine, and it is for, let's put my notepad down, this is called the Gunther Blanket, and it is a tapestry crochet blanket made of lots of squares. If I show you it close up, you can see it. A single square has 4 V's, 1 V on each side. So when you join them all together, you get this pattern of diamonds running up and down and across the blanket. It's also got this, which I was quite pleased with, this ribbed border which I think gives it a really nice cozy textured look. It's made with Aran yarn with Karen Simply Soft, which it's quite a I've used it before for another commission, well, it might have been since, this might have been the first time I used it, I can't remember. It's got a bit of a sheen to it compared to like the Stylecraft and Paintbox Arans, which I think are more slightly matter, fuzzier. This has got a bit more of a sheen to it, which I think I do prefer, to be honest, not to have such a sheen for a blanket project. But at the same time, when it's all worked up, I think it does look really good. But if I were to make another one of these blankets, the yarn was obviously chosen by the magazine, but if I were to make another one, I think I'd go for probably an Aran yarn like the Stylecraft or Paintbox Aran yarns, which haven't got quite so much a sheen. But I do really like these colours. These weren't the colours that I originally chose or suggested for the blanket, and they did go with that colour originally, but then I've got a really funny feeling now that I talked about this in the last episode, but maybe I didn't. Sorry if I'm repeating myself. And I wasn't sure when they switched the colours for these originally, the red and the white, because it wouldn't be a colour combination that I would have probably ever chosen. But actually, when it was now it's all made, I'm quite pleased with how it turned out, and I do quite like it. Although having said that, it totally doesn't go with the colours in our lounge at all. So I haven't yet found a home for this blanket yet. So we'll have to see what happens with it in the long run. But this is the Gunther blanket, and since it's now more than 4 months since it was published in the magazine, you can now get the pattern from me, and it's on my Ravelry, Etsy and Lovecrafts stores, so it's there if you would like it. So that's the first new pattern release. The second one is a project I showed you last time, but it hadn't been written up, and I've made a bit more of it since then. So last time I showed you this cowl that I'd made, which I'm not sure if I'd named it last time, but it is called the Bellever Cowl, and I've made it with West Yorkshire Spinners Bo Peep Pure, which is 100% wool DK yarn, and it involves tapestry crochet to make the patterned part, and then the ribbing is added on at the end in a using a join as you go technique. I've also made a coordinating matching hat to go with it. So it's the same pattern, although I reversed the colours. So the blue and the white, if you look closely, you can see that the patterns are the other way round, which actually gives quite a different look, swapping the dark and light colours the other way around, because makes a different part of the pattern stand out, if that makes sense. But it uses the same techniques, the same technique for adding the ribbing. There's obviously a difference at this end, where there's a few decreases before you just gather it all in at the top. And then I personally think this hat looks best with a pom-pom added, but it is totally up to you whether or not you add one. So this is also made with West Yorkshire Spinners Bo Peep Pure, which is, yeah, as I said, it's 100% wool yarn. I know wool can sometimes feel a bit itchy, so some people might not want to make a hat with it, but I think this is actually a particularly smooth wool yarn, and to me it doesn't feel itchy at all. I'll just pop it on and show you what it looks like. The pom-pom, I think the reason I like the pom-pom is that it gives a bit of extra weight. Can you see? I'm not sure if I'm too high up. Sort of pull it down a bit at the back. These colours, this was what I was left with. These aren't really the best suited to me. I think I'd be better with the darker colour here. Tends to make my face look a bit red, but just wanted to give you an idea of what it looks like on. But yeah, I think the pom-pom helps to just sort of weight it down and pull it down nicely at the back when you're wearing it, but obviously it would be totally up to you how you made it. Yeah, so it's made with wool. I don't find it itchy, but if you did, you obviously wouldn't have to use wool. It's DK, so there's lots of alternatives like acrylic yarns, such as this one. So this one is another one that I made with, this is with Shape Ye's Colour Crafter yarn. The blue, I think, is Alkmaar, and I can't remember the name of the yellow. It's quite a bright neon yellow. I think it shows up on the screen. But yeah, made it following exactly the same pattern, but just using a different yarn, and it works out really well in that yarn as well. So this is the Bellever pattern, and it has been tested, both the hat and the cowl pattern, by a group of lovely testers who worked it up in lots of other fabulous colour combinations. And I released it a week ago today, last Friday, and it's available, like all my patterns, on Ravelry, Etsy and Lovecrafts. You get both the cowl and the hat in the same pattern, in the same purchase. They're provided as two separate PDFs, so you can print out one or the other or both depending on what you want to make, but you get both of them all in one purchase. And there's also a discount running at the moment. Oh yeah, I had one other thing to tell you about it as well. But there's a discount code running at the moment, so you can get 15% off on either Ravelry or Etsy until the end of the month with the code BELL15, BELL15. I've just got a bit of fluff on my lips. I'll put the code and links to the patterns and all of the patterns that I talk about today in the show notes below. So if you want to just check you've got the code right, then you can have a look down there, and there'll be a link to the pattern as well. So you can get 15% off until the end of the month. On Ravelry, if you buy any other patterns at the same time, the code will also give you 15% off those as well. So that's my second pattern release, the Bellever Hat and Cowl. So I hope you like it, and it is still here really cold, so I think it's definitely still hat weather very much. We've probably got a good, who knows what March will be like. Sometimes it's really cold and sometimes it's quite warm, isn't it? But it works up super quick, so you could definitely make it in a weekend. So if you want a new hat to get you through the rest of the winter, this could be the pattern for you. So that's the Bellever hat. Oh, the other thing I was going to say about it was I start off both the hat and the cowl with a round or a row of foundation double crochet stitches, or in US terms that would be foundation single crochet, because I prefer doing that instead of starting with a chain and crocheting into the chain, because I find it just keeps my tension much more even for the rest of the project, and it just gives the same tension as the rest of the rows. Whereas if I start with a chain and crochet into it, it can sometimes end up pulling in a bit. So you don't have to use that. You could, if you prefer, do a chain and then go around again crocheting double crochet stitches into it, or US single crochet. But if you want to do the foundation double crochet stitch and you've not done it before, I have filmed a video tutorial on that, which is available on my YouTube channel now. So that can help you with this pattern, or it's really useful for any pattern, to be honest, which is worked in rows. It's a really great way for starting off any crochet project, any blanket or anything anything that you make, as an alternative to doing a chain. Sorry, there's a notification popped up. As an alternative to starting off with a chain. So yeah, that tutorial's up there now. It's a really short one, so just if you want, go and have a look at it, and you might learn a new stitch if you don't already know that. So moving on to finished objects next, I've got 3 finished objects for you. The first one is knitting. Da, 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 da. And yeah, as I said, I haven't knit anything for years. So my oldest daughter's 11 now, and just before she was born, I did do a tiny spot of knitting. I made 1 bootie, so that was never worn because I never made a second one. I think it's still hiding at the bottom of my bag somewhere. I did make her a hat, and I actually even made her a jumper. But when I thought about knitting again, I've no idea how I managed to make those things. I can't remember any of the skills at all, really. So when I decided to start a new knitting project, it really was like starting from scratch. I couldn't even remember how to cast on. Although once I did start knitting, it did, somewhere inside me, I did have a memory of those stitches. It did come back to me doing the knits and the pearls. Anyway, I made a ribbon gather hat with a free ribbon gather hat pattern from Emma at Potter and Bloom, and I used the yarn she suggested, which I think I showed you last time as a ball. It is Cedar Jewel Spun, and there's loads left, so I could definitely make another one. I made this over Christmas. It was really nice to make. Did quite a lot of it in the car. We went to my parents for Christmas, and I did quite a lot of the knitting in the car on the way there and on the way back. Yeah, it's not perfect. The stitches aren't that even. Definitely the first round is quite loose, and I've been looking at photos of this hat on the hashtag and Instagram, and went with mine, the rim, you can see it goes out. Oh, you don't really notice it when you're wearing it because the whole hat stretches out, but it goes out wider than the rest of the hat because my first round was quite loose, and everybody else's photos, more experienced knitters, the rims in the photos sits in nice and snugly and doesn't come out like this, so that you can see that's one difference. So if I was going to do it again, I think I'd try hopefully get that first round a bit better. In the pattern, Emma gives, she says, if you're a beginner, so the pattern is alternating knit and purl, I think it's called purl through the back loop, but she says if you're a beginner you can just do alternating knit and purl stitches. So I thought, well, I'll do that because this is my first knitting project in ages, so I'll go for the simple option, and that was fine. I think with the next one I make, with the other half of the ball, whenever I make it, it might not be till next winter, I don't know, I might try and learn how to do this purl through the back loop stitch, I think that's what it's called, and do that instead. I think looking at the photos it looks like it might give a slightly more defined rib to this one, I'm not sure. But yeah, really happy with this. With the yarn, with it being variegated, you don't really know what colours are going to turn up when. My favourite bit is actually this bit here, where it's got this really lovely pop of bright green. I really like that green and bluey section, as you could probably guess from the colours I go for in a lot of my makes. But unfortunately this bit, when you turn up the rim, well, you can see a little bit of it at the bottom, although it tends to come down a bit as I wear it, but a lot of it gets lost, which is a bit of a shame, and quite a lot of it is more of this sort of maroony colour, which is nice, but I'm not so keen on the having all this pinky maroony stuff. So I'm quite keen, actually, looking at the ball, I've been looking at it and seeing what colours are coming up next. I am quite keen to make another one and see if it turns out a bit bluer and greener and less purple, because I'd quite like one that worked out a bit more like that. So yeah, keen to make another one and see how that works out in different colours. But I was really pleased with this, and it was really nice to do something different for a change that wasn't crochet, and see how it worked out, and I've worn it quite a lot recently. I've got 2 hats. One was a Christmas present. It was a bought hat. My daughter gave it to me, and I've got this hat which I made, and I've been swapping between the 2 when I do the school runs and going out for walks recently, and they are keeping me nice and cozy and warm. So I'm really pleased with that, and it has inspired me to do a bit more knitting this year. I haven't got any other knitting on the go at the moment. It might be a bit ambitious. I would really like to try knitting a sweater, and I'm also quite tempted to try knitting a pair of socks. The thing that confuses me quite a lot at the moment is when you look at the patterns and it tells you what needles you need, and it doesn't really mean anything to me. Crochet hook's straightforward, it's just a one size, but you get circular needles and not circular needles, and then you've got the length to think about as well as the diameter, and it all just seems a lot more confusing, and I don't know. I've got a set of knitting needles that my gran gave me that she used to use, so I've got quite a few, but I need to have a look at them and see if they match what's in the pattern, what different patterns need before setting off on them, because it's not just a matter of getting the yarn, you need to make sure you've got the right needles for it as well, and I just haven't quite got my head around that yet. So once I do, yeah, there might be a little bit more knitting on the way from me this year, which would be nice. Right, the next finished object is one that I finished shortly after Christmas and early in the new year, which I started 2 or 3 years ago, I don't know. It is a big scrappy granny square blanket, and every time I had a tiny bit of yarn left over after I'd finished a project, I'd save it, and over the years I sort of started saving bigger small bits as well, and then I had been quite regularly adding them to the blanket. In the middle, some of it is wool, but after the first few rounds it is all acrylic DK yarn, and I had quite a sort of a backlog of scraps that I had saved but not added to it, and after Christmas and New Year I just wanted something really easy and relaxing to work on, so I decided to finish off this blanket. So I think, so there you can see the middle, I probably did a good few, maybe from about here-ish, all of that, which is quite a lot of the blanket actually. It probably doubled in area adding that amount of rounds to it after Christmas, and it's got to a good size for putting on your lap and snuggling under on the sofa. So I decided, I'd used up all my scraps, so I decided to stop then, and I just finished it off with a round of double crochet. So it's not really got a border, but it's, well, just a really tiny one, and I have to say I really like this blanket. Just all the different sections with different colour combinations in different areas of it. Some of the yarns I can remember what project they're from, but quite a lot of them I've got no idea how I ended up with this orange. I've no idea where that came from, and why I've got scraps of it. But yeah, lots of different colours, different colour combinations, and memories from different projects in it, and it just makes it, this section here, I love the colours in that bit. I think they're really good. Yeah, really nice happy blanket to snuggle under. So when I'm crocheting in the evenings now, I've normally got this one on my lap because it's so cold, and then whatever I'm working on top, and I might keep it on my lap now actually, just for a bit of extra warmth while I'm talking to you. So that was my second finished object, and my third and final finished object for today is a rainbow blanket, which I made before. I made one in September and talked about then for my older daughter when it was her birthday, and at the time my younger daughter said, will you make one for my birthday? And she hasn't mentioned it again since, so I don't know if she was still hoping for one or if she'd forgotten or not, but I thought I better make her one. So I did, and I had quite a bit of Aran yarn left over. So this is all made with Aran acrylic yarn. It's made with 5 strands all held together, and yeah, it was a massive stash buster, and it's really, really heavy. And it took a bit longer than the first one because I can't remember what hook I used for the first one, but the one I made for my older daughter, it's much more, it's less dense basically. The stitches are bigger and gappier, and I think this looks better having the stitches a bit tighter, although it obviously took longer to work up, but it used more yarn for the area, and it's really, really heavy. But I'm really pleased with how it turned out. In the evenings, I couldn't really tell because of the light how the colours actually truly looked. So it was only in the daytime the next morning when I could see how everything looked. And I was a bit worried at some points, but then when it was finished, I was really pleased with it. So yeah, she was happy too. It was her birthday on Tuesday, and I gave it to her, and she's just been snuggling under it when we read her bedtime story, and in the evenings when it's a bit chilly before she goes to bed. And then it sits on her bed, and she's actually quite hot. She doesn't like to have too much over her when she sleeps, so she doesn't have it over her when she actually goes to sleep. She just has her duvet, and sometimes not even that. So this just goes at the end of the bed then, but she does like snuggling under it when she's awake in the evenings still. Unlike my older daughter, who has a duvet and 2 crochet blankets on her bed that she sleeps under for, to be honest, most of the year. I don't know how she doesn't get too hot, although in the morning, to be fair, they are normally on the floor, at least one of the blankets is anyway. Yeah, but they're very different in that regard. But yeah, that's my last finished object. Worked out really, really quickly. So the pattern is called the Rainbow. It's dead straightforward, but it's called the Rainbow Blanket if you want to get the pattern for it. It's from Lindsay Nunes, who is Lottie and Albert. And I also made this. I was joining in the Cosy Winter Blanket along. I think that's what it's called. It's a crochet or knit make along, and you can make any blanket you want. There's no particular pattern, and I think it's running until the end of February, throughout all of January and February, and it's hosted by Sherry at Ollie and Bella and Ali at Little Drops of Wonderful, or on Instagram I think she's called Starry Eyes Ali. So I made this as part of the Cosy Winter Blanket along, and it is definitely a cozy winter blanket, so I think it fully fulfills the brief. Right, that's it for finished objects. I've been talking for nearly half an hour now, haven't I? So a few more things to show you. One, I'm going to give you a little update on a whip that I've been working on, which I haven't shown you for a few podcasts. So this, I think I showed you all of this last time. I've been making the Juniper Jumper for my older daughter, so I haven't sewn in any ends yet. But yeah, I think I had finished this, which is, I think it's the back, can't remember, back or the front. And since then I've been working on the front or the back, or the other side. And that is very nearly done now as well, up to here. I think it just needs 2 more rows of bubbles, and then there's instructions for a bit of shaping. Last time I showed this, I was debating whether or not to do the bubbles on the sleeves as well or not. The pattern says to put the bubbles on the sleeves. I was unsure because I thought, well, firstly it'll take longer, and it's taking long enough anyway, and secondly I thought they might catch on stuff, and also because I've chosen cream, I thought they might get a bit dirty just when as they lean on the tables and whatever. So I have decided to just do the sleeves plain. It's all made in double crochet or single crochet in US terms. So I'm just going to do the sleeves, follow the pattern but omit the bobbles and just do them with plain stitches. So hopefully that will save me a bit of time and they won't take too long to work up. But this pattern, it's taking a long time for two reasons. One, like I said, it's all double crochet, so it's quite a dense, it's going to be really cozy, but it's quite a dense stitch pattern, although it does look really smart and good like that, I think, and less sort of crochet like compared to if it were made with trebles. And the other reason it's taking so long is because I'm doing it in secret, so I can't work on it until after my daughter goes to bed, so I only get like 45 minutes to an hour on it each evening, and then I go to bed. So it is taking a while. But I was thinking maybe when I get onto the sleeves, because they're actually just going to be plain and quite boring, I could just tell her it's for me, and then do the final joining bit in secret, and then when I show her the whole jumper with the bobbles on it as well, it will still be a bit of a surprise, and she won't be too fussed about seeing just plain grey sleeves. So hopefully that'll give me a bit of a spurt on to be able to finish it if I can, because if I can start working on it earlier each evening while she's still awake, then obviously I'll get more done. So that's my plan, and being so close to finishing this back panel now, I'm really hopeful that it won't take too much longer, especially if I can work on it more hours a day to finally finish it. But even when it's finished, I'm not going to give it to her until I've got a jumper to give my other daughter as well. The plan was originally to make her one of these as well, and I was going to do it with this blue as the main colour and cream bobbles, but since this one is taking so long, and I'd want to make the second one in secret as well, because even though my younger daughter goes to bed earlier, so it could be secret from her, I don't want my older daughter to see it, and I don't think I do anyway. I'll have a think, but I was wondering about finding another pattern for a different jumper that uses DK yarn that isn't all double crochet stitches. Maybe it could be treble or half treble instead, that I could make for her instead, that works up a bit more quickly, and she'd never know that it didn't take so long to work out. So I was going to have a little look for that sort of pattern on Ravelry, but if you've got any suggestions of a jumper for a child, she'd want, she wears age 9 clothes, so it would have to cover that age. It can't be for really young children. Some of them don't go up to that old, do they, if they're just for babies and toddlers. Yeah, so if you know of any nice kids jumper patterns that are made with a DK yarn, let me know, and I might do that as an alternative to making another Juniper jumper for my other daughter. So who knows, they might be able to get them as Easter presents. Probably be a really hot day and I'll be giving them these cozy winter jumpers that they won't wear again until the autumn. But I think I just want to get them finished because they keep growing, the girls, not the jumpers. The jumpers are growing a bit. Otherwise they're never going to wear them. But yeah, so that's an update on that project and my thoughts on it. What's next? I have started, last time I showed you some yarn, Katona yarn that I bought for a new blanket design that I had in mind. And this, I said I'd swatched something earlier. It's not really a swatch. Well, it is, I guess, but it's a whole square. So this is the square that I've made using the yarn I bought. It's a test square. I'm going to weigh it and see how much of each colour I used. I'm not 100% sure this is it. I only bought one ball of each colour, so once I work out what I'm making and how much I'll need, then I'll order enough more to make a whole blanket. What I'm not 100% sure on is I like the colours. Again, I had the same issue that I've been working on this in the evenings, and I've got this is a red, this is a rust, and this is a sort of a pale rust, and then there's this yellow as well. But the red, the rust and the pale rust, when I'm working on them in the evenings, look really similar. In daylight there's more of a contrast and difference between them, which is good, but I'm still not 100% sure on this balance of colours, whether to keep this in or not. I do really like this colour. Another idea I had, I haven't got any in here, don't know where it is, but it would be to add, to perhaps do the whole thing, I'm showing you the back now, to perhaps do the whole thing on like an off-white background, like my Clarissa and my Gunther and my Midnight Diamond, but then is that just sort of repeating what I've done before? So, and then move the blue maybe into a stripe instead. I'm not sure. I do like this combination of colours, but I'm not 100% sure on if the balance is right. Looking at it in daylight, I think it might be. Another thought I had was to vary maybe just swap around the red and the rust between alternating squares. So keep the yellow and the pale rust the same in every square, because they're gonna join and touch. But in alternating squares, what I could do is swap the red and the rust over. And I do like the idea of a nice dark blue blanket. So yeah, that was my swatch, my play around. And looking at it in daylight, I am happier with it. But yeah, let me know, what do you think about it? What do you think about the colours, the balance of colours? Should I consider doing it on a white background, or be different and keep the blue background for a change? I think I might. Yeah, so hopefully there'll be a bit more, once I've had a bit more of a think about this and where it's going and how I'm going to build it up, hopefully there'll be a bit more to show you on that one next time. So that's a new project I've started. I haven't got anything else to show you other than a project which I'm about to start. So my oldest daughter has recently, in January, she started going to a bouldering club. So it's like climbing, but they don't have any rope. And I thought it would be quite low down, but actually they do climb quite a long way off. If she fell off, it is quite a fall. But anyway, she hasn't, and obviously it's got a soft floor. But because of where it is, it's only for an hour, but there's not much point me dropping her off, coming home and then going back again, because I might have 20 minutes at home before I had to turn around and go back. And they've got like a nice little seating area there. So the last 2 times I've taken her there, I've stayed in the car and waited. And I was working on my finishing off my Bellever hat the first time I went. The second time I realised they didn't have a nice small portable crochet project to work on. So a new pattern came out yesterday, I think it was, or the day before, this week, from Marta at Marta Mitchell Designs, and it is a crochet sock pattern. I'll try and put in a picture of it for you so you can see them. And it's called the Fiddle Socks, and they're made with DK yarn, and they're a really nice cozy pair of socks. And I like to wear a nice cozy pair of socks in the evening and in bed. So I thought that sounds perfect, and socks are obviously a really nice small portable pattern Plus I have some, with it being a DK yarn, I have some DK yarn in my stash that I could use to make it. So it's left over from a challenge I did for hobby yarn last summer, but I've got some of their acacia yarn in a few different colours, just a few balls, but you don't need much for socks. And this is, it's really, really soft and smooth. It is lovely, and it is 51% acrylic and 49% cotton, so it's not necessarily the sort of yarn you'd automatically choose to make socks with, but at the same time I think it might work up quite well. The pattern says to do the whole sock all in one colour, but I'm thinking I might, it also gives some ideas for sort of switching things up a bit at the end, so I'm thinking I might use these two and do cuffs and heels and different colour maybe. Something like that. Anyway, so that is going to be my crochet project for when I need something small to take with me to work on the go in the car, or while my daughter is bouldering, climbing. And that's the last bit of crochet really I've got to talk to you about today. So if you were only here for the crochet stuff, then feel free to stop watching now. The only other thing I thought I might chat to you about, if you're interested, is what I've been listening to while I crochet. So as I said, I discovered I get a lot more crocheting done if I listen to something instead of watching something. So I've started listening to things on Audible, and recently I have just finished listening to a book called Reasons to Stay Alive by Matt Hague, and it was the title that caught my interest on this one. On Audible, on the subscription that I've got, you get, like, I think I get one free book, any book per month, a credit for it, plus there's this whole like library of, you probably know this if you subscribe to Audible, but there's this whole free library of free stuff as well that you can access, that you can have at any time. And there's some quite good stuff on there. There's a few things by Bill Bryson, which are the sort of books that are so full of interesting detail, that massive ones as well, that I'd never find time probably to read and get through. They'd be a bit of a slog, but listening to them whilst crocheting is actually really good. So last year I listened to The Body by Bill Bryson, which was absolutely fascinating, really good. I'd recommend that. And recently I listened to another one of his, I think it's basically a history of the home. I can't remember what it's called. That might be called something like The Private Life of the Home, something like that. But it's a history of all the different rooms in the home and the house and how they came to be as they are now. But it goes off on all sorts of interesting historical tangents as well, and loads of detail. And he reads that himself, and he read The Body one as well. So it's quite nice hearing it, listening to it read by the author. But I wasn't going to mention either of those actually, but they just popped to mind. But I've just finished Reasons to Stay Alive by Matt Hague, which was a free one. So I don't think I would have necessarily spent one of my credits on it, but because it was free, it sounded interesting. So I thought I'd start listening and see what it was. And it was really, really good. So he suffered from depression and anxiety. And so it's a part, and at one point he mentions this, he doesn't really know how to categorise the book, but it's part sort of a description and story, if you like, of his experiences and how he got into it, and the sort of the depths of it, and how he got through it, and how he came out the other side. And then it's also part sort of a bit self-helpy, tips really, suggestions that might or might not help, that some helped him, some helped other people, different things help different people. And also, if you just don't know that much about this topic,
it's quite informative. That was another really good one to listen to. I learned a lot, and it's another one that's read by the author. He reads that himself, so it was really nice to hear him telling his story in his own voice. So that one was really good. And then one I'm in the middle of at the moment, it's called The Versions of Us by Laura Bennett, and I am really enjoying it, but I have to say I'm finding it a little bit hard. I think I need to just write down a note, because it's one of those stories where it's basically 3 different versions. All 3 versions, and they tell you which version it is in each chapter. So there's version 1, 2 and 3, and they all start on the same day, I think in 1958, something like that, and it's about 3 main characters, and they're all in Cambridge at Cambridge University on that day. And then from that day, it's 3 different possibilities of how their lives could go. And it's really well written and really interesting. But what's confusing is that, to me, listening, is that there's also actually quite a lot of overlap between these 3 versions and similarities between them. Some things happen in all 3 versions, but perhaps happen differently because the circumstances of the characters has changed. So I'm sometimes finding it hard to remember, oh, is this the version where he's doing this or doing that? And it's taking me a little bit of brain power to be alert to which version am I listening to and what is happening in this version. So I think I might just need to get a pen and paper and write down version 1. This is the version of these 3 characters being in this situation, and so on. So when each time a new chapter starts, and I can't stop listening midway through a chapter, because when I start again, I've got no idea which version I'm on. So I have to make sure I stop at the end of a chapter, so that when I start listening again, it says version, whatever. So I'm enjoying it, but it takes a little bit of concentration to keep track of which version you're listening to. But I would recommend it. Keep track of which version you're listening to. So that's probably absolutely more than enough from me for today. Thank you very much for listening. I hope you've enjoyed it. If there's anything you'd like to hear more of next time or less of, please let me know, and it'd be lovely to hear from you in the comments if you'd like to chat. Thanks again, have a brilliant day, and I will hopefully film another podcast again in a couple of weeks if all goes to plan. Have a lovely day. Bye bye.